right, good to see you guys tonight. I'm glad you could come out. Hey, I don't know about you, but most of my days, they start out with pretty good intentions. Like I start out thinking I've got pretty high goals for the day or maybe for the week. And you guys start out that way, like high intentions, good intentions. Yeah, about a quarter of you. The rest of you, you're kind of just like, yeah, whatever happens. I'm just happy I woke up today. But you know, you have those days where you get up, you get ready, and you're like, all right, I've got a plan for today. I'm going to get everything done. And today's just going to be amazing. Like, all my schoolwork's going to get done. I'm going to, you turn in that job application I was thinking about. I'm going to do this and that. And you only to find that by lunchtime, all you've really done is like binge watch Netflix, and you've eaten way too many Flaming Hot Cheetos, and you've made the world's like dumbest TikTok video ever. Like, that's like your morning. You're like, I'm accomplished, right? Like, that was a Monday right there. That was pretty good. In fact, I want you just to picture, like, this last week. Picture an average day in your week, whatever it may have been, and just think about it. How many minutes of that average day can you truly say that you lived? Like, you didn't just exist, you didn't just like survive it and get through it, but how many days of that average day would you say, man, I really lived? Like, I really got after it that day. I know this, a lot of us just get through the day, but I also know this, that many of you in this room, I would venture to say most of you in this room, have big dreams. You want to do something meaningful with your life. You want to like accomplish something that will outlast you, that will bring God glory. You're like, yeah, I want to do all these incredible things. Some of you have dreams to serve God overseas. Some of you've got dreams to like write a book, or maybe to start a company or build like an organization that's going to help other people out, maybe people that others look down on. Like, you want to do all these incredible things. And I would guess every one of you has some sort of dream that you want to get out there and do. But sometimes the reality for us is that we look at these big dreams for our lives, and we feel stuck because we just don't know where to start, or we get stuck in that day where all we did was watch Netflix, and we were like, man, I really didn't do anything. How in the world am I ever going to be able to accomplish this big dream? I don't even know where to start. And so you end up kind of putting the dream off, putting the big things away, and you just pass the time with things that are maybe somewhat meaningless. We play it safe instead of like going for it. And our lives, as a result, become filled with stress and anxiety and all this stuff that just feels like it's just little things that don't actually move us forward anywhere. We're starting a series. It's going to be a 7-week series, and it's called Win the Day. It's based on a book. And you can pick this up. Someone asked, like, do you need to like read the book, or like are you going to be lost? You're not. If you just show up, you're going to be in good shape. But if you want to get it, there's this book, Win the Day by Mark Batterson. And in his book, he tells a story of a guy named William Osler, who this guy would go on to found the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. He founded a residency program, and he wrote the medical textbook that became like the standard for doctors in training at that time. But this guy, William Osler, started out as a scared young man, stressed out by final exams and the idea of starting a medical practice, who nearly had a nervous breakdown. Anyone relate? Like, you're like, I have this dream, and you're like, I can't go outside of my room today. It's like, I just need to stay under the covers a little bit longer. But he made it through, and this guy did all these things, and he told this story of crossing the Atlantic on an ocean liner, where the captain showed him, this is back, I think, late 1800s, early 1900s, the captain showed him this ocean liner with the latest and greatest technology on this ship. And he could push a button, and it would basically take the different parts of the ship into completely watertight compartments that they wouldn't let any water in or out, and they could seal off portions of the ship. And later on, he challenged students at Yale University to live their lives not in watertight compartments, but in day-tight compartments. One day, like, what if you just focus on, how do I do the most today? How do I get the most out of this day? Because you can't do much of anything about what's happened in the past, and there's really no, fruit out of worrying about what's going to come in the future. And here was his advice, and I love this phrase. It was this: let go of dead yesterdays and unborn tomorrows. Let go of dead yesterdays and unborn tomorrows. And instead, when we seek to live out our God-sized dreams, we simply have to ask the question, what's important now? Like, what's the most important thing now? And it's like the line from one of my favorite songs from Frozen 2, just do the next right thing, right? Like, just do the next right thing. You don't know what all is way down the road, but just do the next thing that you know God wants you to do. Do the next thing that you know is the right idea. And so just imagine, like, what if we sought to win the day, like to live our lives in a way that truly looks to make the most of each and every single day. So we're going to talk about, over the next 7 weeks, these 7 daily habits that are going to help you, according to the tagline of the book, and I think so, stress less and accomplish more, but not by just putting in these productivity kind of guidelines, but really looking at some stories from Scripture that help us see how we can do this, how we can deal with the past, fully engage in the present, and move forward intentionally into the future. So the first habit we're going to talk about is simply this. It's to flip the script. Flip the script. What that means is that for many of you, your past is holding you down from winning the day. Your past is holding you back from winning the day. And so we need to change really the way we may have been living. You know, your past might have a hold on you because of some huge mistake you made. And maybe you messed up, like big time. And the regret of that past mistake is like weighing you down, and you feel like you can't fully function today because of what you did in the past. Or your past might hold on to its grip because of how somebody else treated you. Maybe as a family member or someone you dated in high school, or a friend, or whoever it may be that is like weighing you down. Or some of you, your past holds on to you because you're constantly questioning. You're asking yourself, like, did I make the right decision? Did I choose the right major? Did I choose the right school? Is this the right friends for me? Am I living in the right place? Like, am I doing this right? And you overanalyze like every decision you've ever made in your life. So today we're going to look at this story, and I was laughing as Tim read the passage from Numbers because I'm like, out of context, like it's kind of a depressing passage I had you read. But we're going to look at the story of where God's people kept their eyes on the past instead of where God had them and where he was taking them to. So if you've got a Bible, it's on your app or a physical one or whatever you've got on your app, on your phone. I was like, that didn't sound right. If you've got an app on your phone, if you've got a physical Bible, we're going to look at Numbers chapter 11. We're going to look at just the first 6 verses of Numbers 11. And let me give you a little background of what was going on here. The people of Israel had been in Egypt for 400 years. Started out as a positive situation where they were escaping famine, but it quickly became a place of slavery for them and hard labor. And so the people there, they cried out to God, and God raised up a leader named Moses who brings them out of Egypt into a new promised land. And this exodus is incredible. I mean, there's these 10 plagues that go on. The angel of the Lord is passing over the homes of God's people. Then the Red Sea parts, and they walk through it on dry land. And at this point in the story where we're going to read today, they've been moving through the desert, and God has just given his law to Moses at a place called Mount Sinai. And he's handed it down. This is where we see the 10 Commandments and the rest of the law in the Old Testament. And he's leading them through the desert as a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And every day he would provide food for them through something called manna. It was this powdery substance on the ground that they would collect, and they could make these cakes out of them. And it's described later as like tasting like honey and this incredible kind of flavor. But then there's some complainers. And that's where we're going to pick up in Numbers 11, starting with the first 3 verses. It says this: Now the people began complaining openly before the Lord about hardship. When the Lord heard, his anger burned, and fire from the Lord blazed among them and consumed the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So that place was named Taberah, because the Lord's fire had blazed among them. So these people started complaining, but it wasn't just like any old complaining. Like, God was taking them to a good place, and they're like basically whispering in God's ear, saying he'd done evil to them. Like, oh, you say you're taking us to this good place, but this is terrible, God. This is the worst place ever. So it angered God. He says he sent fire on the outskirts of the camp, burns it up. They cry out for help. Moses prays on their behalf, and the fire dies down, which sets the stage for the next part of their complaining. And your different translations say this differently. This is verse 4, Numbers 11, verses 4 through 6. It says, the riffraff, that's what my translation says, the riffraff among them had a strong craving for other food. The Israelites wept again and said, who will feed us meat? We remember the free fish we ate in Egypt, along with the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now our appetite is gone. There's nothing to look at but this manna. Now, riffraff it probably means this mix of other people that were with them. Some people from Egypt had come with them. I just like that it says riffraff in the Bible. It's pretty funny. But some Egyptians had come along, and they're saying this manna was no longer enough for them. They've been eating it for a year, and maybe they're tired of it. They wanted something different to eat. It's like in my family, I've got 2 daughters, and I can never find what they want to eat for breakfast. Like, we'll land on something. We're like, okay, you like Honey Nut Cheerios. Awesome, let's buy it. So we start buying it, and then like 2 weeks later, it's like time to get groceries. Like, hey, we got you these Cheerios. Oh, I don't like those. Well, we used to. No, I don't like those now. So, and then like my other daughter, like she'll like only like waffles. Like she only likes food that is like requires preparation and stuff. It's like, but you got to get going in the morning, and you know it's all like virtual school right now. So she wakes up at like 5 minutes till class and like pulls out the Chromebook and is on. So like I can never figure out what they want to eat, and that's what these guys are like in Israel. The people of Israel, they're complaining. It's not just the riffraff; it's the Israelites as well. When you look at verse 5, you know, it says, "We remember the free fish we ate in Egypt, along with the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic." But they're leaving out a key fact. They're talking about how great the food was in Egypt, but there's a really important fact they're leaving out here. They were slaves in Egypt. Like they're saying, "Hey, remember how awesome Egypt was? That was the best food we've ever had. But you were a slave there. You were like forced like into hard labor. You were making bricks for the pyramids and whatever else you were building. Like you were a slave." You know, the Israelites, they had this selective memory. All they remembered here was how good the food was, but they forget that it came at the cost of their freedom. You know, memory's a funny thing. Like if you ever like think about your memories and stuff, like sometimes we forget things. I'm laughing because my 8-year-old daughter the other day, we were talking about memory. We're like asking how far back she remembered something. She goes, "I remember 12 things." Like, okay, what are they? She's like, "I can't tell you right now." She's like, "I remember 12 things." Very specifically, 12 things. So if you run into her, be like, "Harper, what's one of the things on the list?" I want to know what these 12 things are. But you know, memory is weird. Like we don't always remember things right, and we forget stuff. Sometimes we forget things like the Israelites. Other times we remember something, we blow it out of proportion. We're like, "That was the worst thing ever, and that was terrible." So sometimes we look at our past, and we only see the good parts of a horrible situation. And you might like miss your old life before knowing Jesus, but you forget you were a slave to sin at that point. Like that's who you were. And you're like, "Oh, that was so great when we used to do this, and we used to be able to go out and do all these things." But you were a slave. Just like the Israelites, like, remember the food? There was leeks. I mean, what a thing to bring up. There was like garlic and melons and all this incredible stuff. But you were a slave. We can glamorize things in our past and actually miss the point of what was really going on in that season of our lives. Now, other times, we blow things out of proportion. We may have some big mistake in our past, and we let it just define us. And you might think, let's say it's the worst thing you ever did in your life, and you let that past mistake now define who you are today, instead of letting it just be a moment in time. You know, it's like this. It's the difference between like a still photo and a video. If some of you view your past like a still photo, where it's just a snapshot in time. Like if you see this picture here of me, if I defined myself by this lovely photo, I would feel pretty bad. And my phone is unfortunately filled with weird selfies and stuff like this. But imagine if I defined myself by this moment in my past. It's like, this is who I am. This is forever who I am. Imagine if I created my entire identity out of this. But your past isn't a still photo. Your past is more like a video. Like it moves through time. There's ups and downs and good parts and bad parts. But you can't just take that one moment and go, "Wow, that's who I am. That just defines me." And we can do the opposite too, right? Like some of you see people on Instagram and things, and you're going, "Wow, look how great their life is. Look how amazing they are. They've got it all. If only I was more like them." It's a still photo. It's one moment of their lives. There's my family photo. Nice. Yeah, much better there. That's what I prefer to remember. There's Harper with her 12 things she remembers. She's thinking about him in that photo. She's like, number 9. You know, you've got to remember, we don't need to erase the past, but we need to recognize and not let ourselves be defined by our past. You see, your past shapes you, but it does not define you. Your past will always shape you. Your past experiences, good and bad, will shape you, but they don't define you. They've helped make you who you are, but it doesn't say this is who you are forever. And so we can't let ourselves just remember a moment and think this was it. So the Israelites were remembering this past like full of amazing food, but they were forgetting a past that was marked by slavery. And so these free people on the road to the promised land had forgotten who they really were. They'd forgotten who their identity was. And so much of our lives are just like this. They're defined, our lives are defined by the stories we tell ourselves. And you repeat this story to yourself over and over. This is just who I am, you know? If you tell yourself that, oh, I'm just a loser, you're gonna live out that way. If you tell yourself you're just a messed up sinner, you're going to live that way. If you tell yourself you're a piece of junk, you're going to live that way. But what if winning the day started by flipping the script? If we flipped that story around and we said, okay, that's not who I am. Like there's good in my past, there's bad in my past, there's all sorts of things in every one of our pasts. But what if we saw our past as the stories that have informed you and made you who you are, but at the same time, you didn't allow the mistakes or regrets of your past to be your whole story? What if instead you allowed those difficulties to be a launching point for you? To be the thing that you said, you know what? Because I went through that, I'm going to change, and that's not who I am now, and I'm going to grow and be this other person who God is calling me to be. I want to share two quotes with you from Mark's book tonight that I thought were meaningful to me, and this first one is here. It's this: the Israelites were set free the moment they exited Egypt, but sometimes it takes 40 years for the truth to catch up with us. They were free as soon as they walked out of Egypt, but for many of them, including these people who are complaining here, they never saw themselves as anything but slaves eating the free food back in Egypt. They never saw themselves as free. And some of you have been set free, but you're living like you're still a slave to whatever it is that might be holding you back there. And you need to flip the script. Here's a second quote from the book. It's this: you aren't defined by the things you've done wrong. You are defined by what Christ did right, his righteousness. If you define yourself by what you did wrong, you're going to always just live in this murky pool of going, man, I'm just this terrible sinner. Look at me. But instead, if you define yourself by what Christ did right, you say, I have his righteousness. He's given that righteousness to me. It will change your life. So here's my question for you today is, what story are you telling yourself each and every day? What are you believing to be true about yourself that might need to be re-examined? That you might need to go, that's not who I am. Maybe some of that's who I was, but that's not who I am. And some of you have been seeing lies as truth for far too long, and it's time to flip the script and remember that it wasn't better back in Egypt. Egypt was a place of slavery. And so we can't win the day and truly move forward until we put the past in the past. And we say, this past is real, it's there. Next week we're going to talk about that. Next week we're going to talk about being honest with your past and looking at it and getting there and going, okay, what's there? But then the point is to then move forward. Because some of us, you just kind of like have these different ways of maybe dealing with the pain from your past, and you need to actually face it and say, okay, this is done, and we're going to move forward. But here's the big idea for tonight is this. The big idea is winning the day starts with burying dead yesterdays. It starts with burying dead yesterdays, with saying, that's no longer who I am. That's no longer my story. That's no longer who I'm going to be. And you know what? One of the things I love about ministry with you guys is you've got your whole future in front of you. You know, you've got these dreams and these plans, and you're like ready to roll. I love that. I love sitting down and hearing from some of you about, here's what I want to do, and here's how God's using me, here's how he's shaping me. And we want to be a community that helps you move forward in that, and in the dreams that God's given you, and the plans that he's set before you, and the way he's uniquely made every single person here. We want to help you as you just chase down that purpose that God has given you. So I want to encourage you guys these next few weeks, just let's lean in together in this journey. Let's see what if we could put some habits in place that would help us win each and every day and continue moving forward towards the future that God has designed for us. Let me pray for us, and then we're going to sing together again.